Welcome all to accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible individuals and organizations and the work that they do. I am your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic, paralyzed below my shoulders, and a power wheelchair user. I'm the Community Relations Manager here at accessiBe and a passionate disability rights advocate and attorney focused on breaking down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Today, on accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, we are joined by Eric Ingram, the co-founder and CEO of Scout. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you on here. So, Eric, let's just jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, obviously, per your description, my name is Eric Ingram, co-founder and CEO of Scout. We are a space company, so just to warn you ahead of time, there's going to be some space-related content here, so avert your children or avert your children's eyes, whatever. So my background, I am a manual wheelchair user. I have a physical disability called Freeman Sheldon syndrome, which is a form of Arthrogryposis. I've been in the space industry my entire career, also heavily involved in the adaptive sports community. So I am, in addition to being the founder of Scout, I'm also on the board of directors for an organization called Mission AstroAccess, which is working on making spaceflight accessible to all people, regardless of physical ability. And on the board of directors for an organization called Together International, which is a resource for entrepreneurs with disabilities. And so they also run accelerator programs for startups and early stage companies ran by those with disabilities. And I'm on the board of directors for the Space Frontier Foundation, which is a space industry advocacy organization that is a bit broader applicable to the space industry. On the adaptive sports side, sorry, I mean,
you go for it. Go for it. I want to hear about the adaptive sports.
Done a bunch of stuff on that side as well. Been in wheelchair rugby since 2005 as an athlete. Founded a team, served on leadership positions on multiple club teams. Was on the U.S. developmental team a few times and competed internationally with that. And also served as the president for the United States Wheelchair Rugby Association from 2016 to 2020. So
when you say quad rugby, for the audience that doesn't know what that means, to describe the sport.
Yeah, wheelchair rugby is a full contact wheelchair-based sport. It is played on a basketball court, 4v4. We play in wheelchairs that kind of look like tanks. There's armor plating all around. Just predominantly for quadriplegics or people with impairment in all four limbs or significant impairment in three limbs. And high intensity, high impact, a lot of fun. I always describe it to people as the best sport you've never seen. And, always kind of working on the side to trying to get that to the mainstream audience.
And then, so why space? What drove you towards a career in the space world?
That is a super great question. Actually, people ask me that all the time. I don't really have a singular moment where, I looked up at the sky and I saw a shooting star and I was like, that's where I belong. That just never happened. It's always just kind of been an innate thing. I just knew I wanted to work in the space industry. I just knew I wanted to go to space. It was never a switch that got flipped. I guess, I just drank the Kool-Aid really, really early and have just been pursuing it at least actively since high school. It's kind of evolved from there.
And just tell us a little bit about how the work of Scout is doing to become a new vision for spaceflight.
Yes, space is pretty crowded as it is, especially in low Earth orbit. And it's only going to get a lot more crowded in the near future. The population of satellites in space is expected to increase 40x in the next decade. And the way we currently track things using ground-based radars and optical telescopes won't be sufficient once that population increases. So what Scout is doing is developing vision systems for satellites for autonomous navigation. So you can think of it like autonomous cars, how they are able to drive around stuff using vision systems. we're developing the vision systems and softwares for satellites to do the same thing. In addition, we're developing what you can think of as space traffic cameras. So systems to monitor space traffic so that we can see who's doing good stuff, who's doing bad stuff, and who needs, a slap on the wrist for things.
That's incredible. So like with trying to accomplish these outside this world type ideas and concepts, like what does your day-to-day look like to make that happen?
My days are pretty chaotic. I've been traveling a lot recently, so that's been part of it since the world has kind of opened up post-COVID. I've been on a lot of airplanes. For instance, 2 weeks ago, I was hanging out with you in Dallas, and then last week I was in St. Louis, and then on Sunday I'm flying to Rochester, New York, and then in a couple weeks after that I'm going to Seattle, and then Paris, and then back to Rochester. It's pretty busy, but day to day. It's a lot of meetings and coordination both internally and externally. So as CEO, I'm overseeing all of the operations and making sure the ship is going the right direction. So coordinating with the management team, making sure things are on track, and working with external parties like customers and partners and potential investors to better our footing in the industry. So a little bit of everything.
And if like let's say if you had some advice for a person with a disability, or really just anybody that's interested in getting into the space world, what can they do to even like start going in that direction? If you have any advice.
Yeah, what's funny is I actually just recorded a few TikTok videos or Instagram Reel videos. I don't know, whatever software platform we're putting them on, like specifically related to this topic. So I'm going to try not to reproduce any of that, but I will start with the disability piece. Our industry is notoriously closed in. Until very recently, the entire industry was just old white guys, old white, able-bodied, cis male people. And that is rapidly changing. There's a huge DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives happening in the space industry for all different kinds of minority groups, including those with disabilities. And I'm doing a lot of that effort along with others for the disability aspect, including Mission AstroAccess, as I mentioned before. But in terms of just breaking into the industry in general, bring what skills you're good at to the table and be enthusiastic. A lot of people's perception of the space industry is that you have to be like an aerospace engineer or this elite human to take part of it, when really it's just like any other industry. We have janitors, we have graphic designers, we have accountants, and we do have engineers, we have business people, and everything in between. So there's a skill set that you have, and there's experiences that you have, and you just need to look to see how those tie in to the industry. You don't necessarily have to reinvent yourself to break into it. You just have to navigate your way into it and be able to communicate how your experiences are applicable to X job or something like that. And so that's what I tell people a lot. There's so many people I encounter that's like, oh, I need to go back to school to become an engineer, to go get into the space industry. And, you don't really. There's so many other ways to take part. And that's something I'm very, very vocal about because I've had to like help steer people away from, reverting their entire lives to get into the industry. And then, now they're mostly doing pretty successfully.
That's awesome. I've mentored so many families through their disability employment journey, and I always try to like let them know with your unique skills and talents, um, really the sky's the limit. But like with Scout and everything you're doing, it's like you take it beyond the sky. You guys are going even further, which I never. It's pretty awesome what you're doing and what you're tapping into, and it's brilliant. So just thank you for being in this space, literally, and for sharing
The
kind of all
space.
space.
Yeah.
It's so very, very cool. So up to date, kind of, I would love to know kind of what are you within your career or within Scout, what are you most proud of? What have you accomplished that you're most proud of?
It's difficult to narrow that down. I think it's just the act of creating and building something. I think that it is like the most astounding to me, and the thing that is still awesome. I founded this company in early 2019, and we struggled for a solid 2 years. There was only two of us, and there was a few times we almost shut our doors because we were running low on funding, and then at the last second something happened which got us through. And of course there was the COVID thing and all of that. So forever it was a two-person company, and we were just slogging through all of the muck to get through the day. And then the last year or so, it started around June of last year, it has just been insane. We've won multiple government contracts. We've got commercial customers. We flew our first mission to space in June of last year. So we have a payload in orbit right now that we launched June of last year. That still is astounding to me. But the team is up to 15 people, which I mean, for me, like, it's weird that people look to me as a leader and actually believe the stuff I say. So it's really cool to see that. But to see this kind of, at this point, mostly autonomous entity kind of taking a life of its own, and it's, not me having to drag it along, is really exciting. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but starting to see the success after a long period of building up to it is really exciting.
That's wonderful. You guys on a much different journey than most businesses, and it's awesome to kind of to just hear about and learn about it, because like not every day you get to talk to people that are like in the space world. Like it's a different conversation that I'm not used to, and with everything with the satellites, and I'm very curious kind of what accessibility means to you, whether it's on here on planet Earth or out in outer space, if accessibility means something different to you in both places.
I think it means the same thing. And I don't know if I'm going to put it into the best words possible, but to me, accessibility is essentially being able to participate or do something that anyone else could without anything stopping you from doing it, right? So it's you and an able-bodied person going along the exact same path, and everything is equal. And there's no differentiation. And I think generically, that's what accessibility means to me. You asked about the space piece specifically. For one, just an aside, I really hope that in the very near future, conversations with space people aren't like some crazy new thing happening. I really hope space industry gets mainstreamed, and that, I mean, it's very exciting, but I want more people to be exposed to it. All right, so that off my soapbox there. If you look at human history and the trajectory of humanity, we're at the very beginning of human spaceflight. We've only had people in space since like the late 50s. And the number of people that have gone to space, period, is in the low 600s ever. And so if you think of the entire future of humanity, we're at the exact beginning. And so the best time to design something for accessibility is at the very beginning. There's no retrofitting. There's no afterthoughts, all of that stuff. If we can design at the beginning, it's the easiest thing to do. So what mission AstroAccess is working on specifically is figuring out, how do we make spaceflight accessible to everyone? The specific groups we're looking at right now are mobility impairments, vision impairments, and hearing impairments, but we'll expand beyond that, and really trying to dial in what are the things that prohibit us from being as equally effective and able in space as an able-bodied person, and what adaptations do we need to make to spacecraft, to space stations, everything in between, so that any astronaut or space tourist or anybody going to any of these destinations or using any of these crafts has no different an experience than any sort of able-bodied astronaut or space tourist or anything like that. And that's really what we're building up to.
Removing those barriers, creating equal opportunities. It's incredible just to like think about like what does accessibility in space look like, and how does that work? Because it's just is there any like of those 600 astronauts or 600 people in space, has anyone really self-identified as a person with a disability to kind of be the first person, the ambassador, or is it,
It's
have we not?
it's kind of a mixed bag. So I'll kind of start current and move backwards. Last year, SpaceX had their Inspiration 4 mission, which was the first all civilian space mission that orbited Earth for 3 days. So there's 4 crew on board. One of the people on board, her name was Haley Arsenault. She is she had bone cancer when she was a child and had part of her lower leg, the bone removed, and she has an internal prosthetic in one of her legs. And they did all of the astronaut testing that they would have anyways, centrifuge testing. They went on jet acrobatic rides and all of that stuff, and she had no issues. So that was a huge data point right there that just happened last year. Before that, you had astronaut Leland Melvin. He was in the neutral buoyancy lab, which is a huge pool at the Houston Johnson Space Center where they test stuff underwater. He had a decompression issue and became deaf in one of his ears. So he had to be recertified to fly, being partially deaf. And then I think a couple years ago or last year, NASA released a report that they kind of, I don't know if they kept it secret, but it was close hold information about all of the medical issues they had to retroactively approve for their astronaut corps. Because, you know, when people are NASA astronauts, usually NASA astronauts for like 20 to 30 years, and your body changes over that time, stuff breaks, you know, and so there was a list of things they had to accommodate for. And then additionally, looking slightly forward, the European Space Agency, or ESA, has started their para-astronaut program, where they are actually having people with very specific disabilities, so it's kind of limited at this point, apply to be ESA astronauts. I forget if they have a different term, but and so that is a formal step by a nation-state space agency towards that, and it's a baby step. But I think on the commercial side, with companies, with private organizations, and all that stuff, I think you'll see it move a lot faster.
That's so cool. These are such fun conversations. I never knew about any of this stuff, and now I do.
Everyone
So
should
thank
know
you,
about all
Eric.
of this. The fact that this isn't just commonplace knowledge is really frustrating to me. There's so much exciting stuff happening that it's upsetting to me that a very small percentage of the civilization is really informed about it. And I don't think it's the fault of the people. I think it's just the fault of, you know, our whole communication cycle and maybe the industry's PR and you know, lack of like super flashy headlines.
Well, we're having the right conversation today. And that's what matters. And I'd love to like continue this conversation for businesses across the country. Like if you had one message for businesses across the country of why they should be including people with disabilities, what would that be?
The key to a company's success is creative problem solving in whatever form you want that to take, whether it's advertising to bookkeeping to developing a new product to whatever. You need to be creatively solving problems if you want to grow and develop and expand and improve as a business. As a person with a disability, my daily existence is problem solving and doing things that are out of the norm to adapt to whatever the situation is. When I travel, when I do work, when I'm just thinking about my problems, I'm incorporating my life experiences into that process. And my life experience is, again, solving problems creatively, putting pieces together that other people wouldn't. And so when you have a more diverse workforce, especially those with disabilities, you bring that creative problem solving, that experience, that knowledge, that ability to overcome burdens that you might not necessarily get with a general non-disabled applicant, or however you want to politically phrase that. And so that's what I would say to them. It's expanding capability by expanding experiences.
That's a beautiful answer. And I want to end on a fun kind of bonus question I want to throw your way. But if you could have a conversation with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's tough. I mean, you gave me this question ahead of time, and I'm still not entirely sure. There's so many people. I mean, what about future people? Like, can we talk about people in the future, or does they have to like have already existed?
Existed. They have to have
Okay.
existed.
All right. You're killing me here. I'm just going to take an easy answer out and say Nikola Tesla. And I'm not even sure if this is my final answer, but this is my answer right now. He was an amazing inventor who, basically gave a lot of technology to the world without any sort of fame or well, he had a little bit of fame at the time, but no recognition, certainly no monetary benefit, and was really just doing stuff for the good of society. He may have been a little bit crazy there towards the end, but that's fine. And so I would like to pick his brain about his general thought process, and his methodology and his reasoning for doing stuff.
I like that. Well, Eric, thank you so much for your time today and for being on today's accessiBe's Spotlight session. A wonderful guest, and just definitely I don't think I'll be having many of these type of conversations with other guests, but hopefully that changes. Like you said, we'll continue having these great conversations. But yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you for being on our show today. And for our viewers, thank you for joining us to the end. Until next time. All right, take care, everyone.